Telephone! Chandra! 3!
This is hugely exciting to listen to. We feel that we're virtually inside the bobsleigh with the team. Yet while this sport is no doubt enjoyable for the participants, it's also a highly stressful physical situation. Listening to the bob pilot, we can hear the vibration and the tension engendered by the sheer speed and potential danger of the situation. Now let's listen to the 2 Apollo 11 astronauts landing on another planet for the first time in history.
Feet, 3.5 down, 9 forward. Okay, 75 feet. That's looking good, down a half. 6 forward. 30 seconds. Lights on. Forward. Forward. 40 feet down, 2.5. Picking up some dust. Straight shadow. 4 forward, drifting to the right a little. Contact light.
These intrepid men in their lunar module flying machine were virtually sitting on top of its descent engine, which was roaring away, producing up to 10,000 pounds of thrust and burning at a temperature of 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. We also know there was air inside the LEM. It was pressurized to 1/3 sea level atmosphere, so the incredible roar of the engine would have produced considerable sound and vibration. According to some sources, even through their bubble helmets, the astronauts in the LEM could hear the noise of the thrusters firing, yet apparently they couldn't hear the roar of this powerful rocket engine. That's a little difficult to believe, isn't it? Even the space shuttle astronauts popping up into low Earth orbit have pointed out the extreme vibration and noise when thrusters fire from their craft, and the shuttle is very different from that of the flimsy LEM. Compare this
Meshed and Dixon!
with this.
Okay, 75 feet. That's looking good, down a half.
So unlike the pilot on the Bob run, the astronauts' voices on the Apollo 11 soundtrack sound unbelievably dull. There's no impression of vibration whatsoever, nor do we hear the roar of the rocket engine beneath them. Even more bizarre are the circumstances in this next scene from Apollo 12.
Just before these astronauts touched down, they were apparently able to film the Surveyor 3 craft that had landed at that same site in April '67. But instead of just catching a fleeting glimpse through the LEM's triangular window as the LEM continued on its descent path, this sequence from the conquest of space, using original NASA film, is very suspect. This result is wholly consistent with imagery that could only be taken with a specially mounted camera capable of considerable lateral panning capacity. As we run the sequence again, notice how the perspective of the grounded Surveyor 3 changes as the camera moves around it. The LEM didn't have that capability. To obtain such a shot would actually need a special camera mount to give plenty of sideways movement, while the craft, such as a helicopter with the door removed, maintained level flight. Here is a type of helicopter rig that will be required in order to create the result in question. The published imagery is therefore not commensurate with the viewpoint from an onboard camera at the LEM's triangular window.
Apollo 12 also had sound and light problems. They suffered from what was claimed to be a failed TV camera very early on in their moonwalk. This failure had the happy effect of turning the transmissions into sound only, and thus ensuring that millions of terrestrial TV sets were switched off.
This is what viewers saw prior to the TV camera failure. By the way, here might be a blow on the whistle concerning the lighting at the time.
Boy, that sun's bright. That's just like somebody shining a spotlight in your hand. It really is. It's just like somebody's got a super bright spotlight in his hand.
And then a reference to the TV camera.
Now, Sam doing some useful work like getting that TV camera going. Okay, good idea. Okay, Houston, I'm going to move the TV camera now.
As the TV camera is moved, we can see that it is functioning, because the light source has generated lens flare. The camera is being moved around pretty rapidly, and we can see it is picking up flare and strange striations into the lens, which is allegedly the point to which the camera is supposed to have failed.
There it is.
And here is a clip from an official NASA documentary relating to this incident.
Set to watch the moonwalk on TV, controllers were frustrated when the solar rays destroyed the camera.
So according to NASA, the solar rays destroyed the Apollo 12's TV camera. But in this scene from a later mission, Apollo 15, we have precisely the same effect, yet the camera continues to operate perfectly satisfactorily. Now here, back with Apollo 12, we have flare picked up by the lens, which indicates that the camera was actually working. It is just pointed at something static. However, the camera is not securely locked into position, and therefore over a period of time the camera changes its view, as you can see. And as you can hear, everyone thinks it's all very funny. But as the fixing on its stand is not tight enough, the camera is slowly drooping, and this fact is demonstrated by the changing images captured over a period of time.
Coming in there now, Al.
It would not have been possible to see this differential imaging if the camera had really been destroyed by being pointed for a while directly into the sun, the official reason for its failure. The operations manual and the handbook that accompanied the TV camera clearly indicate that the camera should never be pointed at any bright source, nor directly at the sun. Given their intensive training and the experiences supposedly acquired over the preceding Apollo missions, why then did Apollo 16 astronauts need to ask Houston if they should point their camera at the sun during a lunar EVA?
Point the camera away from the sun, barrel all the way up and down. Yeah, the camera directly down sun. And down at the ground. Down, huh? That's right. Directly into the sun? Negative. Away from the sun and down.
We leave these sound and light anomalies for the moment to discuss one particular mission in April 1970, that of the lucky 7th lunar module, Aquarius, and the unlucky 13th command module, Odyssey. The alleged failure of the Apollo 12 camera had been a very good test for NASA and an indicator of the level of attention that America in particular, and the world in general, had towards the space program. Perhaps discouraged by Apollo 12's sound-only show and given other political realities in America, the public seemed to have turned its back on space. However, Bennett and Percy's research suggests that this was an intentionally induced state of boredom and was also, among other things, good preparation for the moment when NASA intended to switch their audience back on again. And during the 13th hour of the 13th day of their 13th Apollo mission, how very remarkable, just 2 days out from Earth, they toggled that switch, and what was said to be an exploding oxygen tank jolted the command module and the Apollo story back into the media spotlight.
Houston, we've had a problem. We've had a BP bus thunderbolt.
Here we see the astronauts inside the command module delivering a live broadcast. They're supposedly nearly 200,000 miles from Earth and just 8 minutes from their Big Bang, or problem, as they would delicately put it. Remember, the command module was named the Odyssey and the lunar module Aquarius. Listen to this communication.
And passing to the time away on our transit out to the moon. And it's rather odd to see it floating like this in Odyssey while it's playing the themes of 2001.
So shortly before the astronauts signed off, the music used in the film 2001, A Space Odyssey, was playing in the command module.
It's rather odd to see it floating like this in Odyssey.
In that last comment, the astronaut emphasized the word odd for us. And just how apposite was it that moments before the explosion and the enforced extracurricular use of the LEM Aquarius, he takes the trouble to mention their sign-off song, a song from the musical Hair, in which the words, "This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius," figure. Not to mention when the moon was in the 7th house. Who exactly is blowing the whistle now?
And of course the tapes would be complete without Aquarius.
whole of this scenario has all the hallmarks of a carefully written script. Indeed, the words used to announce their accident to Houston, "We have a problem," were first spoken in much the same circumstances in 2001, A Space Odyssey.
What doesn't come from 2001, nor indeed from the Hollywood movie Apollo 13, is the bizarre colour of deep space in NASA's footage of the Apollo 13 mission. When the astronauts have transferred to the LEM, some 200,000 miles from Earth, we look out of the small observation window and see the colour blue, not the black of space that NASA's astronauts describe. The official NASA footage has the LEM's triangular windows entirely filled with a blue as bright as that of a cloudless summer's day here on Earth. It's astonishing. If these astronauts really were some 200,000 miles away from Earth, surely the windows of the LEM should be entirely filled with the black of deep space.
Were they too in low Earth orbit, as appeared to be the case with the Apollo 11 sequence we saw at the opening of this program?
Following the accident, the claimed oxygen tank explosion, a crew member photographed the supposed damage to the CSM.
And there's one whole side of that spacecraft missing.
This is the damaged Odyssey. Now look at this picture of a command and service module with a cover removed from its scientific instrument bay. Looks rather similar to the damaged Odyssey, does it not?
Even supposing, as many experts claim, such an explosion would have thrown the spacecraft way off course, it seems that the Apollo 13 mission encountered more than just their exploding oxygen tank. Apparently, there would have been other problems too.
Fra Mauro is situated in the southwestern quadrant of the Moon, and what is of significance in relationship to this site is the position of the terminator, the line that marks the limit of the sunlit portion of the Moon. To be able to land on the Moon successfully, the LEM pilots needed to be able to see where they were going, and NASA has always emphasized that all landing sites and times were selected with this requirement in mind. But at the time of the Apollo 13 accident, their Fra Mauro landing site was in complete darkness, and, most significantly, it was to remain in darkness until long after the astronauts had left lunar orbit. This fact is clearly apparent from a computer reconstruction. And this fact can be checked with the help of a little rudimentary knowledge of astronomy and an ephemeris. But if you aren't mathematically inclined, don't worry, because the maths have been done and the results check out. It's also been confirmed by Andrew Chaikin, space historian and author of A Man on the Moon, which was written with the compliance of NASA, that concerning Apollo 13, Chaikin states, by Wednesday, April 15th, 2.5 days after the accident, the Apollo 13 combo had circumnavigated the Moon, corrected its trajectory, and was already 19,000 miles into its homeward journey. The Moon, still close enough to see craters with the unaided eye, and Fred Hayes, alone in Aquarius, was looking at it. And Chaikin tells us what Hayes saw, or rather, what he didn't see. Near the terminator, just emerging from night, he could barely make out the highland region of Fra Mauro. So there you have it. The Fra Mauro site was in darkness on the date scheduled for the landing of this lunar expedition. Whatever might be the truth concerning the exact whereabouts of Apollo 13, the Sun and the Moon do not alter their dance through space.
These examples are only just a few of the anomalies that researchers Bennett and Percy have discovered concerning Apollo 13. However, the sample shown is already enough to enable us to further see that something's very wrong with this mission in particular, and the Apollo space program in general. We certainly have to conclude that the official data concerning this mission is unreliable. The author's opinion is that Apollo 13 was never designed as a mission to actually land, but as an exercise in space rescue systems, an exercise held principally for the education and the benefit of both crew and mission control, while still fulfilling an integral part of the overall space program objectives. While these researchers consider that most operatives at Houston and their contractors were ignorant of the detail, they suspect that, somewhat obviously, the astronauts themselves were fully aware of their location, in low Earth orbit and nowhere near the Moon.
As we know exactly where the terminator was during the mission, Why, in the NASA-approved Hollywood movie version of Apollo 13, which featured Tom Hanks, why do the astronauts declare themselves able to see their landing site at Près when approaching the Moon on Tuesday, the 14th of April? As we know, it was in complete darkness, so they're apparently pretty clever. But they do better than that. They are then able to spot, within the next 13 seconds, two other sites, Tsiolkovsky Crater and Mare Imbrium, in that order.
Look, it's Frau Morrow. I can see our landing site.
Wow. Look at the Tsiolkovsky Crater. I can't believe how bright the ejecta blanket is.
It's like snow. It's beautiful. It's Mare Imbrium to the north.
They must have had X-ray vision, for this observation is a physical impossibility. How could they be flying over the dark, far side of the Moon and see Frau Morrow in darkness on the near side? And while the Sea of Tsiolkovsky was on the sunlit portion of the far side, it was well over 1,000 miles away. Then again, Mare Imbrium, on the near side, was mostly in darkness and again hidden from their view. So now, as we run that sequence again, note the trajectory of the spacecraft in relationship to the Moon.
Look, it's Frau Morrow. I can see our landing site.
Wow. Look at the Tsiolkovsky Crater. I can't believe how bright the ejecta blanket is.
It's like snow. It's beautiful. It's Mare Imbrium to the north.
So here we have even more inaccuracies in the movie account of the Apollo 13 flight. However, as a method of discouraging investment in long-term manned space travel, this space drama could hardly be faulted. Indeed, this accident was later heralded by certain astronauts and other personnel as the reason for NASA's curtailment and eventual abandonment of manned deep space flight. The prospect of dead astronauts indefinitely looping around our solar system, an artificial Death Star featuring in our night skies for eternity, surely was motivation enough for the implementation of the Apollo surrogate program.
Could it be relevant that the Apollo 13 landing site that never was took its name from the 16th century Venetian monk Fra Moreau, who was the instigator of a map that never was? Fra, or Brother Moreau, was also cartographer to the court of Venice, and at one time he set about producing the perfect map of creation without removing himself from his cell. He apparently achieved this feat by collating the tales that travellers brought to him, yet no trace of his map has ever been found. There's only his journal of this experience, which was discovered on a Venetian island by author James Cowan, who then translated it into English. This adventure in mind mapping raises important questions concerning the links between representation and imagination, and even the nature of reality itself. Cowan found that Frau